Why we care more about our pets than ourselves, a shocking truth about human behavior. Picture this: 100 people are prescribed medication, something their doctor believes is crucial for their health. Now guess what happens next? Out of those 100, around a third won't even bother to pick up the prescription. That's 33 people out right at the start. Now we're left with 67 of those. About half will mess it up. They might forget doses, stop taking it early, or completely neglect it. We're talking about potentially life-saving medication here, and yet people just don't take it. Naturally, doctors and pharmacists often blame the patients. We did our job, they say, we gave you the treatment, you didn't follow through, what else can we do? But psychologists, they see it differently. From their perspective, it's not just about what was prescribed, but how. Did the provider make sure the patient understood? Did they explain why it mattered, check for obstacles, offer real support? Psychologists are trained to believe that the responsibility doesn't end at writing a prescription. It continues all the way through until the patient actually benefits from the advice. And to be fair, psychologists usually get more time with people than most medical professionals do. But still, this pattern is troubling. Now here's where it gets worse. Imagine someone finally gets a kidney transplant. For most, that's not just a medical procedure, it's the end of a long, exhausting journey. They've been stuck on dialysis for years, and dialysis, it's brutal. It's not just sitting with enrollment for an hour or two, it's 8 hours a day, 5 to 7 days a week. It takes over your life, then finally, they get a new kidney. A second chance, relief, hope, but there's a catch. To stop their body from rejecting that new organ, they have to take immunosuppressant, anti-rejection drugs. These medications lower the immune system so it doesn't attack the kidney, which to the body is still a foreign object. And yet, even in this life-for-death situation, many patients stop taking their meds. Let that sink in. After everything they've been through, some still stop. It's not because the drugs don't work, though nothing's perfect. It's because they don't take them properly or at all. That sounds absolutely insane, right? But it's more complicated than it looks. A lot of transplant recipients face other major issues: mental health problems, financial hardship, isolation, or distrust in their doctors. Some are depressed, some can't afford their meds so they ration them, others just don't fully grasp how serious the situation is. And now, here comes the twist. Let's say your dog gets sick, you take him to the vet. The vet gives you medicine. What happens then? You fill that prescription, you give the meds on time, you follow instructions to the letter, you don't skip doses, you don't cut the treatment short, you don't just hope it gets better, you make sure it does. Studies show people are more reliable when giving medication to their pets than to themselves. Let that sink in. People take better care of their pets' health than their own. It's not that vets are more trustworthy than doctors. It's not that pet meds are more effective. It's not even that pet prescriptions are easier. It's just that people care deeply and they act on that care. But here's the uncomfortable part. Why do we show more love and responsibility toward our pets than we do toward ourselves? Why is it easier to care for your dog than for your own life? Some might say it's shame. Some say it's because many people struggle to believe they deserve care. Others might argue that it's about control. It's easier to manage someone else's needs than face your own. Whatever the reason, it paints a heartbreaking picture. Pets, loved as they are, can't survive without us. But many of us feel like we're not worth saving, even when everything's on the line. There's an ancient story in the book of Genesis, yes, the very first book of the Bible, that explores the root of this human contradiction, but that's a topic for another time. What's important now is this: you deserve the same care you give your dog, your cat, your bird, or even your bearded dragon. You deserve to be well, you deserve to be helped, and if we can learn to show ourselves just a fraction of the love we give others, everything could change. Maybe the first step to healing is remembering you're worth it too. Let's talk about one of the oldest stories ever told, the story of how everything began. In the first few chapters of Genesis, the Bible actually gives us two different creation stories, each with its own unique perspective. The first account, often called the priestly version, shows a powerful creator shaping the universe through speech alone. God speaks, and light appears. He separates land from water, creates plants, stars, animals, and finally, humans. Male and female, created together in his image. That's Genesis chapter 1. Then comes the second version, known as the Jahist narrative, which starts in Genesis 2. Here, the tone shifts. This is where we meet Adam and Eve. hear about Cain and Abel, and witness the flood with Noah, as well as the mystery of the Tower of Babel. It's more personal, more human, and much older in style. But to really understand these ancient texts, especially the first one with God creating through words, we have to step outside of our modern mindset for a moment. Today, most of us see the world through a scientific lens. We've been shaped by the ideas of thinkers like Newton, Descartes, and Bacon. We think in terms of atoms, laws of physics, and objective facts. That way of thinking is only a few centuries old, but the people who first told these ancient stories didn't live in a world of test tubes and telescopes. They saw existence not as a collection of things, but as a series of actions, decisions, and experiences. To them, reality was more like a story than a system, more like a drama than a diagram. Instead of asking, "What is this thing made of?" they asked, "What does this thing mean to me? And how does it help me survive?" They lived in a world full of emotions, choices, and consequences, a world where pain, love, fear, hunger, and joy were just as real as trees or stars, maybe even more real. Think about it. Pain, for instance, is not just a medical issue. It's undeniable. When you're hurting, nothing else matters. Pain demands attention. It tells you what's real in the most personal way possible. That's why so many ancient traditions say that suffering isn't just part of life, it's at the core of what it means to be alive. From this older perspective, life was like a novel or a movie, something lived and felt, not just measured and mapped. It's the difference between a medical death certificate and the heartbreak of losing your father, between your first breakup and a definition of romantic disappointment. So when we read Genesis or any ancient myth, we shouldn't just look for facts. We should look for truths wrapped in story, because these old narratives weren't trying to be scientific. They were trying to be human. And maybe that's something we need to remember in our modern world, that the deepest truths about life aren't always found in data, but in the stories we live and the meaning we make. The world isn't just what we see, it's what we feel. And in that feeling, the oldest stories still speak. There's a world we can touch, measure, and weigh. The world of matter. Science helps us understand it by breaking it down into molecules, atoms, and even smaller particles like quarks. But there's another kind of world, one just as real, maybe even more real, the world of meaning, the world we actually live in day to day. This is the world of experience, and it's made up of entirely different building blocks. Not atoms, but ideas, emotions, events. At the core of this world are three fundamental forces: chaos, order, and consciousness, our awareness, the thing that moves between the two. These aren't just poetic metaphors. They're the foundation of every story we've ever told, every myth, every struggle we live through. Chaos and order are the twin forces we're always caught between, and how we handle them defines the course of our lives. Chaos is the great unknown. It's everything we don't understand. It's stepping into unfamiliar territory without a map. It's the panic of getting lost. It's the dread in the pit of your stomach when you hear bad news at 2 a.m. It can be the fear of a stranger, the silence after betrayal, the moment you realize your life just changed, and not in a good way. It's your world crumbling after a breakup, a job loss, or a diagnosis. It's where dragons live in myths, guarding treasures, testing heroes. It's the abyss that swallows you when everything falls apart. But chaos isn't just danger, it's also potential. Chaos is raw possibility, unformed but full of opportunity. It's the blank page, the silence before a song. It's the place where creation begins. Even in Genesis, the first book of the Bible, the universe begins as chaos, darkness, emptiness, and then through language, order is brought forth. Order, by contrast, is the known. It's structure. It's the way things are when they make sense. It's the routine of daily life, the rules of society, the roles we play. It's your home, your schedule, your traditions. It's standing on solid ground, knowing what comes next. When you feel stable, safe, and in control, that's order. Order is the classroom where lessons are taught, the morning coffee you rely on, the calendar on your wall. It's your culture, your habits, your flag, your family. We like order. We need it. It gives us confidence to plan for the future. It's where things work the way they're supposed to, but order can go too far. When order becomes rigid, obsessive, or tyrannical, it becomes suffocating. When control takes over and nothing new is allowed to grow, we're stuck. Life becomes a prison of routine. Still, too much chaos and we're overwhelmed. Too much order and we're bored or oppressed. That's where the third force comes in, consciousness. Consciousness is what navigates between chaos and order. It's the part of us that knows things are changing. It's our awareness, the light we shine into the dark unknown. It's decision making, risk-taking, learning. When things fall apart, it's consciousness that lets us rebuild. When we're stuck in routine, it's consciousness that urges us to explore. It's the bridge that allows us to grow, but it's hard, and sometimes we don't want to face it. That's why when chaos hits, when a loved one betrays us, when we lose everything, we often give up. We stop taking care of ourselves. We get lost. Why bother? We think, what's the point? But the point is in that third force, our ability to face the unknown and create meaning from it. That's what makes us human. Think about this. You're fine one moment, walking through life as usual, and then you get betrayed. You get laid off. You hear your partner has been unfaithful. You move from the world of order into the chaos of heartbreak, fear, and confusion. You go from standing on solid ice to plunging into freezing water. That moment is universal. Everyone has experienced that collapse. It can happen at home, at work, in a hospital, or in your own mind. When the Twin Towers fell, the world felt it. That day, we all shifted from order to chaos in an instant. The sky didn't change, but the air felt different. What had fallen was more than buildings. It was certainty, safety, meaning. The question wasn't just what collapsed. It was what still stands. In every powerful story, the hero must enter chaos and come back changed. Pinocchio had to face the monster to become real. Frodo had to leave the Shire. Simba had to leave Pride Rock. In each case, it's the same story. Leave the familiar, face the darkness, and come back stronger. This isn't just fairy tale nonsense. It mirrors our lives. When our routines shatter, we're forced into the unknown, but that's also when growth becomes possible. Order is a healthy relationship, built on shared values and trust. Chaos is what follows when that trust is broken. Order is walking through life, not thinking twice about your heartbeat. Chaos is when your heart skips or stops, and everything changes. You could be driving the same car you've always loved, but then one day the brakes fail. The scenery hasn't changed, but the meaning of everything has. That's the thing about life. Even in the most familiar places, something unexpected can change the whole story, and when it does, your ancient instincts will kick in. Fast, emotional, primal responses will take over, just like when our ancestors reacted to snakes in the wild. Only later does higher thought catch up. So what do we do with all this? We learn to dance between order and chaos. We face the fear, explore the unknown, and rebuild the broken parts of our lives. We understand that meaning doesn't come from avoiding pain, it comes from responding to it. It comes from choosing to act, even when the ground beneath us is shaking. This world isn't just made of matter, it's made of what matters, and what matters is how we face the storm. What if the world we live in isn't just made of matter, but of something far deeper, something more like a story? A constant dance between two ancient forces, order and chaos. These aren't just ideas. They're not just philosophical concepts floating in textbooks. They're real, in the sense that we live and breathe them every day. They shape our personalities, our struggles, our victories, and our fears. But here's the twist. We don't first see them as abstract ideas. We feel them, like characters, like powerful presences in the story of our lives. Chaos and order behave not like objects, but like beings, forces we react to, negotiate with, and sometimes even worship. Let's explore how these timeless forces define not just the universe, but who we are. From the moment we open our eyes, we're not just seeing things, we're seeing meaning. That's how humans evolved, not as detached observers, but as meaning makers. Before we saw objects, we saw tools. Before we saw neutral shapes, we saw threats, allies, opportunities. And before we saw a world of impersonal objects, we saw personalities. The world came alive with intent, because for millions of years our environment wasn't just rocks and rivers, it was people. Other people were our world, friends, family, rivals, mates. That's what our brains were designed to interpret. Not just objects, but social dynamics, status, loyalty, danger, love. So when we later looked beyond the human world, into nature, into the unknown, we did so using the same ancient mental tools. We personified reality, we gave names and faces to forces we didn't understand, because we understood people first, and the deepest, oldest categories of personhood we carried with us were male and female. Father and mother, child and elder, Long before humans existed, even before complex animals, life already had its core split into two roles, male and female. The biological divide between the sexes shaped the very structure of our evolution, and therefore our minds. For over 1 billion years, male and female roles have shaped behavior, reproduction, and survival. Parental care, especially in mammals, has been around for hundreds of millions of years, longer than birds, longer than flowers. So when we think in terms of mother and father, man and woman, we're not just expressing culture. We're channeling biological truths etched deep into our brains. That's why we instinctively connect order with the masculine and chaos with the feminine. Order is what we know. It's the structure of civilization, buildings, laws, customs, roles. It's the systems we depend on to survive, schools, governments, jobs. It's roads with traffic lights, libraries with categories, lines at the grocery store. Order is also authority. It's the father figure, the judge, the institution. It's the safety of routine and the burden of rigidity. At its best, order brings stability, fairness, and productivity. At its worst, it becomes oppression, uniformity, bureaucracy, tyranny. A society with too much order stops breathing. It turns into a machine. Chaos, on the other hand, is everything we don't understand. It's the unknown, the unpredictable, the new. It's the mother of creation and the threat of destruction. Chaos is the place ideas are born, it's potential, imagination, mystery, but it's also loss, fear, confusion, and danger. Chaos is the deep sea, the dark cave, the storm that reshapes the land. In mythology and in life, it's symbolically feminine, not because it's weak or submissive, but because it gives birth to everything, including order itself. Every one of us was born of a mother. Every new idea comes from the unknown. In this way, chaos is the source of life, but it can also be terrifying. Chaos is the test, the trial, the monster you must face before you return transformed. This tension plays out even in our relationships. Human women are highly selective in choosing mates, more so than most other animals. Studies show that the majority of men on dating platforms are rated as below average by women, that selection pressure has shaped men into risk takers, builders, fighters, trying to win approval from chaos itself. It's not just biology, it's symbolic. When a man is rejected, he's not just being turned down, he's meeting chaos face to face, and that ancient force says, not good enough. And so, across generations, men adapted. They built, achieved, created, trying to bring order to the chaos of the world and win a place in it. That tension, that need to confront chaos and transform it, is what drives evolution, not just physical but psychological and cultural. Every major religion, every mythology echoes this ancient duality. In Taoism, the yin and yang represent the interplay of chaos and order, black and white, feminine and masculine, swirling together, each containing a piece of the other. In Hinduism, the union of masculine and feminine is seen in the lingam and yoni, often surrounded by snakes, symbols of danger, knowledge, and transformation. Even in Christianity, we see this balance in the images of Mary and Christ, or the idea of Christ as both divine and human, male and transcendent, born of the eternal feminine. These aren't just stories. They're blueprints for navigating reality, and it goes even deeper into the very structure of the human brain. One hemisphere of your brain handles routine. It prefers the known, the predictable, the familiar. The other is tuned to novelty, the unexpected, the strange, the new. Even neurologically, we are built to navigate both chaos and order, not just one, not either slash or both. To live fully, we must walk the line between stability and discovery, comfort and risk, safety and growth. That line, that border between chaos and order, is where life becomes meaningful. You know the feeling. When you're so immersed in a task, you lose track of time. When you're learning something new but not so difficult that it overwhelms you. When life is just hard enough to be engaging, but not so hard it breaks you, that's the sweet spot, that's the path, that's the way the Taoists talk about, the narrow road Christ spoke of, the hero's journey. To stand with one foot in what you know and one foot in what you're still learning, that's where meaning lives. It's not always easy, chaos can hurt, order can bore, but balance between them, that's where growth happens. That's where you become someone new, that's where you come alive. So what does this all mean? It means life is a constant negotiation between the comfort of the known and the risk of the unknown. Too much chaos and we're overwhelmed. Too much order and we're trapped. But when we find balance, when we live at the edge, life sings. That's where we find meaning. That's where we evolve. That's where we become fully human. Because chaos and order aren't just forces in the world. They are the world, and they live inside each of us. Let's take a journey, not just back in time, but into the heart of one of humanity's most powerful symbolic stories, the Garden of Eden. We all know the basics: paradise, a forbidden fruit, a man and a woman, and a talking snake. But beneath the surface lies a story layered with ancient wisdom about consciousness, morality, danger, and human nature. This tale, found in the early chapters of the book of Genesis, is actually made up of more than one origin story. The version most of us remember, the one with Adam and Eve, comes from an older tradition known to scholars as the Taoist source. It paints a more intimate, psychological portrait of creation than the grand cosmic account that precedes it. In this version, God doesn't begin with the stars or the oceans. Instead, he plants a garden, a lush, enclosed space called Eden, which means well-watered place, in ancient Aramaic or in Old Persian, paradise, say walled sanctuary. God places the first human, Adam, in this protected space. He's surrounded by abundant trees bursting with fruit, animals to name and explore, and eventually a companion, Eve. All seems perfect, but there's one rule, one tree off limits. In the middle of Eden stand two trees of great significance, the tree of life and the tree of the knowledge of good and evil. The latter is strictly forbidden. Eat from any tree, God says, but not that one. At this stage, Adam and Eve seem innocent, almost childlike. They don't even realize they're naked. This isn't just physical nudity, it symbolizes a lack of self-awareness. They're alive, but not truly conscious in the way we understand it today. No shame, no judgment, no real reflection. But then enters the serpent. The serpent's appearance in this idyllic setting is deeply symbolic. In ancient storytelling, snakes often represent the unknown, the unpredictable, the dangerous, chaos itself. Even the safest place, it seems, can't be completely sealed off from risk. Eden may be paradise, but no wall is perfect. The outside world, with all its wild uncertainty, finds its way in, and that's the point. In life, chaos always slips into order. Even in the most secure environments, danger lingers. It can be external, a predator, a rival, or internal in the form of fear, temptation, or self-sabotage. The serpent tempts Eve with a profound promise: eat this fruit and you'll become like God, you'll know the difference between good and evil. And notice, it doesn't promise immortality or power or pleasure. It promises awareness. Eve, driven by curiosity and the human drive to understand, takes the fruit, and in that moment, everything changes. She sees, she wakes up, not just to the world but to herself. Suddenly aware, suddenly conscious, and with that awareness comes the realization of vulnerability, of danger, of shame. She shares the fruit with Adam, and he too awakens, not just to the world around him, but to his own nakedness, his own fragility. With knowledge comes self-consciousness, and with self-consciousness comes fear, guilt, and the beginning of moral awareness. It's the price of becoming truly human. You might ask, why was Eve tempted first? Perhaps the story hints at ancient realities. Maybe women, especially mothers, had greater reason to detect danger, like snakes threatening their children. Maybe that vigilance lives on today as the deeper protective instincts and anxieties many women feel. Whatever the case, this story is no accident. Every detail serves a purpose, and there's another layer. What does a snake have to do with vision? A lot, actually. According to evolutionary theory, our ancestors coexisted with snakes for millions of years. Detecting them, especially in the trees, was a matter of survival. Some scientists believe our exceptionally sharp human vision evolved partly to spot serpents in the grass, so perhaps it's not just symbolic that the snake opens the eyes of Adam and Eve. The creature that once trained our ancestors to see danger now gives them sight of an entirely different kind, moral perception. That's why, in centuries of Christian art, the Virgin Mary is often shown stepping on a snake while holding the Christ child high above it. It's a reversal of Eve's fall turned into Mary's redemption. The snake is still there, but this time humanity has learned to resist it. So what does this ancient tale really teach us? It reminds us that danger can't be completely locked out. Try as we might to build perfect homes, schools, systems, serpents still appear. No fortress is secure enough to keep the chaos of life away forever. You can banish threats from the outside world, but one always remains the one inside. As Russian writer Alexander Solzhenitsyn said, the line between good and evil cuts through the heart of every human being. No matter how much we try to protect our children, our communities, or even ourselves, danger always finds a way back in, especially when it lives within us. That's why the goal isn't to make the world safe, it's to make ourselves strong. If we eliminated every danger, every risk, every challenge, we wouldn't just be safe, we'd be stagnant, powerless, infantilized. A world without danger would be a world without growth, without courage, without discovery. Perhaps that's why God allowed the serpent in the garden, not to tempt humanity into ruin, but to give us a chance to grow into something more. Because real maturity doesn't come from staying in Eden, it comes from leaving it. The story of the garden isn't just about a fall from grace. It's the beginning of the human journey out of unconscious bliss into the world of real choice, real danger, and real meaning. It's the moment we woke up, and the moment we began to walk forward.